Hello and welcome back to the NMMA. Cookie is afraid of the Fighting Irish. So thanks to everybody who tuned into the Sim 3 live stream last night. We got to watch about 8 or 9 games that were very exciting and filled with plenty of surprises. So let's go ahead and jump into the standings and see how the Cookie crumbled. Starting off in the East, no surprises here. The Orlando Magic finished the season with 64 wins, pulling ahead of the rest of the pack with a plus 13.9 differential, which improved by almost 3. So that means that over this last stretch, I think they must have been putting up like a plus 16 or 17 point differential. Absolutely crazy stuff. But, you know, they're putting together their veteran experience after 3 consecutive finals appearances and looking to make a 4th in this upcoming playoffs. Time will tell. Not far behind, just 5 games back with 59 wins, very respectable record. The Cleveland Cavaliers, another veteran team who has been extremely dominant ever since Season 2, I think. Perhaps even Season 1. This team finished with a plus 10.5 differential, the only double-digit differential in the East outside of the Magic, and are looking absolutely great. Very curious to see who they face off in the first round. The Atlanta Hawks finish in the 3 seed with the 4th best differential in the East. One could say that they're underperforming a little bit. Their defense is nowhere near as good as it looks on paper between Kawhi and AD and Al Jefferson, but I think this team is going to be a playoff riser. There's no reason that they should be struggling, and their defense has gotten just a little bit better, so I think that if things congeal, that they really could be looking at a deep playoff run. In the 4 seed with 55 wins, the St. Vincent St. Mary Fighting Irish, frankly, are looking even better than the 55 wins that they put up after an absolutely monumental trade for Chris Paul at the deadline, marking the biggest trade that we have had in the history of the NMMA. They have 2 over 95 overall players that are starting, and really their top 7 are looking absolutely dominant. They have a plus 9.5 differential, but that probably was like a plus 12 or so run that they put up in the end of the Sim 3. So I think that they're going to be a playoff riser, and they're personally my pick right now to make it out of the East and go to the finals. Time will tell. At 9 games back from them, so quite a big gulf between the top 4 and the rest of the East, the Detroit Pistons finished the season with 46 wins, and this team is no slouch. I'm hesitant to call them a dark horse because I really think that top 4 is in a league of their own. However, this is a very strong team that has a lot of good young talent and a lot of good veterans, and they could very well be a potential upset for some of the teams that they're going to face. Very curious to see how that first round matchup against the Fighting Irish plays out, and I think that will be a great bellwether as to what will be facing for the rest of the playoffs. The Philadelphia 76ers, with a just barely positive point differential, finish in the 6th seed. Nevertheless, this is another team that has upset written all over them. I think it's going to be a pretty difficult matchup for the Hawks come the first round. Serge Ibaka was, I think, good for number 3 in DPOY votes with 2.6 blocks per game. And AD, meanwhile, did not get any DPOY votes. So this is a very tense matchup between the 3 and the 6 seed, where AD is probably going to be trying to look for some vengeance for not getting those votes. And very curious to see how that plays out. The Chicago Bulls, Chimmy made 2 amazing trades while in the air flying out to paradise in Hawaii, no less. Very Chad move for him. Bring in Monte Ellis and Derek Williams. Forgot that he was a part of those trades. This team probably had some chemistry issues to work out. I think that's the only reason that they're sitting in the play-in as opposed to the playoffs. But I see no way that this team is not actually going to make it all the way into the playoffs. And I think are probably going to be the team to face the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round, which is going to be a devastating first-round matchup for the dominant Cavaliers. Behind them in the 8th seed, the New York Knicks, after blowing up a good chunk of their team, nevertheless are still pretty dominant, and a lot of that is being buoyed by Rudy Gay and Jeff Green's good veteran talent, as well as the amazing rookie defense from Marcus Smart. And don't sleep on boy Ahmed Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like whatever is in Serbia. The Knicks at a 500 record, living the Hawks' dream, could be a little bit of surprise to work their way into the playoffs. I don't have them on my personal bracket making into the playoffs, but you never know. They do have some good talent. Feisty team. In the 9th seed, the Washington Wizards are sitting in the bottom part of the play-in bracket. Joel Embiid has added a ton to their offense. A little bit of good progression from Cookie 0-5, and Darren Collison is really stabilizing this team, so don't be surprised if they end up making it into the playoffs, especially in that 8th seed spot against the Magic. And rounding out the play-in, the Toronto Raptors beat the Orlando Magic in the final game of the season in one of the best games we watched in the entire stream. Very surprising stuff. Despite not having a good point guard, sorry to call you out, Norris Cole, they have an extremely strong starting front court for a team this early in their development between Harrison Barnes, Anthony Bennett, who grew 2 inches prior to this last sim, and Jonas Valanciunas, who is looking absolutely like he is taking a huge leap. And though they have a negative 7.5 differential, I am actually predicting them to bring in that 8 seed spot and to be facing the Magic in the first round, which would be great for their development and potentially for free agency. Sitting outside of the play-in, the New Jersey Nets, unfortunately, are not going to be in the playoffs for the first time in the NMMA. They blew up their team in the offseason and throughout this season, but Davis Bertans looking like a bright spot for them. Isaiah Thomas is getting quite a few buckets. Kyle Korver bringing in some veteran talent, and they should have a lower lottery pick, so can't be complaining too hard. The Miami Heat sit in the 12th seed here, despite making some big trades to bringing Manu Ginobili, Daquan Cook, Kevin Martin, and signing Zach Randolph in the offseason, as well as Jamal Crawford, really did mix up this team, and I'm kind of surprised that it didn't work out. I was expecting them to be an 8 or 9 seed minimum. But here we are, and they are looking from the outside in of the playoffs. Hopefully that pick is going to be translating to a decent lottery pick to have someone to pair with KD, because he really does deserve a very competitive team. With a negative 11.7 differential, we are now looking at the true lottery teams in the East. The runaway Rookie of the Year in Nikola Jokic, despite an amazing performance from Zach LaVine as well, is locking this team down for the future. Very curious to see if they continue holding Josh Smith. I think this team is really just a couple of years away from being a true contender. Jokic is that good. The Bucks are in the 14th seed with a negative 12.8 differential and only 18 wins on the season. And that's exactly where RJ wants to be. He has locked up yet another good lottery pick. Very curious to see if he adds Cat or KP to bring to this front court with Nurkic. Jabari Parker looking pretty good. And Shabazz Napier is second team all-rookie. And rounding out with, shockingly, just 1 win fewer than the Bucks, the Charlotte Hornets, after a just devastating start, brought in Darren Williams, and he helped stabilize them a good amount. I mean, they're still a minus 14 team, which is by no means good, but he is looking to be a somewhat stabilizing force for them, and didn't bring them, to the single-digit wins that some people were predicting. So moving over to the West, the Houston Rockets complete 2 consecutive seasons at or above the 96 Bulls 72-win record. Absolutely stunning stuff. Unfortunately, we could not tie the 73-9 record that we had last season, but this brings us to 213 wins in the 3 seasons since Dwight Howard joined the Rockets. Absolutely dominant force. Many people think that we're the favorite, but I personally think that this is the Nuggets' year, and time will tell. At a plus 16 differential, they did regress ever so slightly, but they have the second best defense in the entire league, and the best backcourt, with Derrick Rose winning MVP, a absolutely dominant run with 26 points per game, and Steph Curry not far behind despite having just a little bit of a shooting regression. The real story here, though, is Draymond Green's progression on defense, which has absolutely anchored them to being a dominant force, and we're looking at a collision course of a crazy Western Conference Finals between these top 2 seeds. Time will tell if they both end up delivering to that point, and what ends up happening in the almost inevitable 7-game series that awaits us. The Minnesota Timberwolves, with a 55-win season, cannot be disappointed here at all. After signing Luol Deng and having great progression by both Giannis and Andre Drummond, and honestly, Nate Lopez-Seneschal, this dominant defensive force of 94 points allowed per game really is a ball stopper to any opponent that dares face them. Very curious to see how this ends up shaping up. They have their work cut out for them in the first round with the veterans Pau Gasol, Jameer Nelson, and of course Kobe Bryant in the first round. That is going to be the first round matchup to watch, in my opinion. With a plus 7.7 differential and 54 wins on the season, the Sacramento Kings are no slouch. They'll be facing off against the San Antonio Spurs in the first round, and Boogie is looking as dominant as ever. I think that he was first or second team All-NBA this season, which makes back-to-back seasons that he was All-NBA. And who knows what they could do. They are kind of my dark horse pick outside of the top 6 teams that could be making the finals. So, great job by Malky navigating a very difficult set of seasons. The San Antonio Spurs, finish in the 5 seed and are not terribly behind the rest of the squad. They are often slept on. With Eric Bledsoe, I think number 2 in most improved player votes on the season. Great progression from Toby Harris and DeMar DeRozan. This is a very balanced team, plus 5.7 differential, but don't be surprised if that kind of stability and longevity that this team has been together throughout the entire sim ends up paying off. That is going to be another amazing first-round matchup to watch between the Kings and Spurs. The Lakers, not far behind with only 50 wins. I think they were a 3 or 4 seed last season. So a little bit of a regression, which is kind of surprising after bringing in Kevin Garnett, who's locking down their defense. Kobe, at 36 years old, is shooting the lights out. I think 54% from the field. However, he's just not taking as many shots as you would expect Bean to do. And so I think he only has like 20 or 21 points per game. And that probably is a part of the reason that their offense is a little bit stunted at just 105.9 points per game. But with a plus 2.5 differential, they are still looking pretty good. And very curious to see how they match up against the incredible defense of the Timberwolves. They're personally my pick to make it to the second round, but that's going to be very hard to face the Nugs then. The Utah Jazz in the 7 seed are our first play-in team in the West. And after selling off Rodney Stuckey to bring in George Hill and some picks, they didn't end up making any sort of deadline moves. But they still have a very balanced team with a ton of experience. I kind of think that they are going to be making it out of the play-in, but who knows? Time will tell here exactly where they fall. With 48 wins and a plus 3.1 differential, they are a good team, but probably are going to be looking to make some moves in the offseason to improve. The Phoenix Suns are the next team here with the most improved player, Kendall Marshall, and 2 of the top 4 Clutch Player of the Year candidates here in their backcourt in Dwayne Wade and Kendall Marshall. What can be said here? They really need some progression. I don't know that I agree with starting Darko, but I mean, it's great for the memes. They're a couple moves away from being more dominant, but this is another team that, for a 500 team, nobody wants to match up against them. On any given day, Dwayne Wade could be absolutely dominant. The Golden State Warriors in the 9 seed will have to win 2 games to make it to the playoffs, which is kind of surprising after taking Denver to 7 last playoffs and bringing in Dirk Nowitzki. They had some great progression from Jordan Crawford, up to an 86 overall. That's just crazy stuff. And a great, great, great season from Klay Thompson, who's finally looking defensively dominating. And rounding out the play-in, the New Orleans Pelicans made the massive, massive trade, moving off of previous MVP Chris Paul to bring in not just Damian Lillard and Brad Beal, but also Samuel Dalembert, Michael Beasley. Who else here? I think Mozgov was already there. That may round it out, but just a ton of amazing rebuilding pieces here. And Damian Lillard is looking excellent as a number 1 with, I think, 4 45-point games already. So watch out for the New Orleans Pelicans in the future. But time will tell if they can win the 2 games that is necessary to make it into the playoffs. The Oklahoma City Thunder are looking from the outside in on the playoffs, unfortunately. They had Amari Stoudemire in the beginning of the season, as well as Tony Parker, but then kind of hedged their bets by trading Amari Stoudemire to the Fighting Irish. And this is a good team. This is an anchored team. They may have enough wins to have a good free agent signing, especially if they can get off of the Tony Parker contract. But they see the downside of hedging their bets a little bit with a negative 3.2 differential and falling to the 11 seed. Just not quite good enough. Speaking of not quite good enough, the Vancouver Grizzlies fortunately pivoted in this last sim to developing some of their youth. But, man, this is 2 seasons in a row that Russell Westbrook is not making it to the playoffs despite being a dominant 96 overall. And that's kind of disappointing. Who knows what the next season holds for them, though? I kind of hope that this is the team to jump in the lottery because Antoine Humphreys looking very good, Tim Hardaway Jr. looking very good. They have some youth, and I mean, they have a solid core here. They're just kind of 1 or 2 moves away from being back to their 3-seed status that they had a couple seasons ago. With a negative 8.2 differential going down now into the deeper tanking teams, the Seattle Supersonics signed like 4 extreme veteran frontcourt players to 2+1 deals, and that kept them from being at the bottom of the ladder, but they have that Hornets pick as well as their own that could be very good in the lottery. So this is the potential super team on the horizon. Zach LaVine with 24 points per game, as you'll see later, very dominant rookie. Portland Trailblazers brought back Brevin Baker from his suspension during this last sim, And he had an increase to his 3-point shooting as well as his free throw shooting. Very important because he was kind of a bad free throw shooter for such a dominant point guard. And, this team, still a couple of years away, but really congealing into something that I think could be special here. Dallas Mavericks rounded out with a negative 15 differential and only 18 wins on the season. Fortunately, we don't have any absolutely abysmal teams like we had last season. Nobody is below 17 wins, which is pretty good. Dennis Schroeder is a bright spot for this team with, I think, 4th or 2nd in most improved player votes. And that'll round out these teams. So let's take a look at team stats now. First, we'll sort by points per game. You can see the Rockets are head and shoulders above the rest of the league with 8 points per game difference, over 8.8 from the Hawks, who are in number 2. Kind of shocked that the Hawks are the team in number 2. Their offense really has exploded over this last sim. Big shout out to the 9 seed Warriors, though. Despite some of their struggles on the season, having the 3rd best offense in the league and the 2nd best for the first 2 sims really is quite impressive. And for the best defenses, Timberwolves and Nuggets maintain their dominant status at the top of the league. Shout out to the Fighting Irish for improving a little bit. I think they are going to have one of the best playoff defenses because between CP3, LeBron, Amari is no slouch, and former DPOY candidate, now old, Tim Duncan, just very, very dominant team, and that is going to match up against a lot of the best stars in the league. Now taking a look at offensive ratings. You see the Nugs at the 2nd best offensive rating, despite not being, I think, even a top 5 offense in the league. Kind of shocking. I think they're underperforming, and I think that they are going to thrive in the half-court sets of the playoffs, and so I wouldn't pay too much attention. I would read into this offensive rating more if I was Dobbsy. I think that they're going to be just fine. I wouldn't say cakewalk to the Western Conference Finals, but pretty close to it. And for the best defensive ratings, Nugs, Magic. Kind of shocked that the Rockets are just a smidge above the Timberwolves here. A lot of that may come from the Timberwolves having an occasional blowout. Just anytime a team outpaces them, they seem to kind of throw in the towel. And 4-point differentials. You can see the gulf between 2 and 3 has closed quite a bit. For the entire season, the Nuggets were right around plus 18, and the Magic were around like plus 11, plus 12. That gap has now closed to, I think, just a like 2.1 point differential difference between the two of them. I would be very curious to see those two teams match up. I still think the Nuggets win, and pretty handily, because I don't think that the Magic have a great answer to dominant backcourts, but time will tell. Now let's take a look at some of the other team stats here. For most three-pointers made, Cavaliers take that top spot from the Warriors pretty handily, too, by 0.3. Here's to see what good teams are not shooting a lot of threes. The Fighting Irish in the bottom third is kind of surprising. 76ers and Bulls could probably be shooting more threes as well. Shooting could be the Fighting Irish's undoing. Time will tell. Man, at 41.5% from three, the Rockets are looking so dominant from beyond the arc. That's what happens when you introduce such a modern offense into this era. I think that gap will close and close as time goes on. Yeah, as you can see, the Fighting Irish in the top half of three-point percentage, but in the bottom third in actual three-pointers made. No surprises here. The Nuggets with that crazy backcourt of both Curry and Rose going to the line all the time and both just being amazing free throw shooters. Lead the league by a very substantial margin at 85.5%. And for rebounds per game, Magic, unsurprisingly, maintain their substantial lead. Kind of crazy to me that the Cavs are number 2 here. Because, I mean, they do have Whiteside, but they don't have a lot of great bigs outside of that. I think they were playing alternately LaMarcus Aldridge and Millsap at the 5 in past seasons a good amount. So that's good news for them. Have a lot of rebounds going around. And for assists, that's a pretty substantial lead for the Magic. I guess a lot of that comes from Rubio, and Iggy is a great passer at the 2. Not to mention Tyreek off the bench, winning his 3rd Sixth Man of the Year of the Sim. Modern day Jamal Crawford. For steals, Rockets overtake the Hawks. Impressive final run for us. Part of that may be the change in playbook. And for blocks per game, the Suns kind of closed that gap a little bit between the Hawks and themselves. I don't know where the Suns are getting all those blocks, to be honest. Well, I guess Larry Sanders, Gortat gets some, but I mean, that's kind of it. Wade is getting a good amount for his position, but it's still not that many like relative to other teams. Hawks leading, though, no surprise there. And I mean, sure, let's take a look at a couple of these. Second chance points. Huge for the Suns to get that many second chance points when they're not the best rebounding team. Bench points could be interesting. Nets, I think a lot of that is the fact that they're playing such a deep rotation is contributing to their bench scoring that much. They've been a 12-man rotation for pretty much the entire season. Let's do opponent field goal percentage. Interesting how little this is correlating with... Oh, whoops. I was sorting by best. Okay, still, kind of interesting how this is not correlating that strongly with the best defenses. The Spurs are a lot higher than you would expect. The Sixers at number 2 is kind of crazy. And I'll finally show opponent three-point percentage. Whew. Timberwolves absolutely stopping three-point shooters. Okay, now let's take a look at league leaders. As you can see, at long last, we have a new crowned scoring champion in the league, Paul George. And by a large margin, 2.2 points per game, overtakes Kevin Durant. Had an incredible last run to this sim. 28.6 points per game, not anything to shake a stick at. Kobe falling to 18 is kind of crazy. Sharing the ball quite a bit more. Zach Randolph leading with 15 rebounds per game. Granted, he's playing almost 38 minutes per game, but I mean, in his advanced age, that is just insane rebounding numbers. Especially because I think he's a little bit undersized, too. I might be wrong, but I think he's like 6'9". Fairly small for a center. But I mean, they do play small ball, so I mean, he's just going to gobble up all those rebounds. Yeah, 260 pounds, I guess that'll do it, too. And Ricky Rubio and Eric Bledsoe fall just outside of that double-digit assist threshold. Rondo, Chris Paul, and John Wall are the only players this season to finish with double-digit assists. Shout out Rodney Stuckey off the bench with 7.7. It's pretty good. Kyrie just outside of the top 20. For steals, we have 5 players with over 2 steals per game. All very much in the running with one another. Paul George at 2.2, despite having the larger scoring responsibility, is pretty impressive. Shout out Kevin Durant at number 18, too. Better defense than one would expect from that big of a scorer as well. And DeAndre Jordan finishes the season overtaking Rudy Gobert just barely. Tied for 2.6 blocks per game, but I guess once you bring that decimal out further, he ends up edging out. Shout out Bismack Biyombo, 2.4 at 4th best, over Anthony Davis. Pretty crazy. Old man Tim Duncan still in the top 15. Tyrus Thomas, pretty good for a bench player. And for field goal percentage, the 2 Rockets centers here at 61 and 57% to be number 1 and 2. Crazy stuff. Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol rounding out the top 10. Great, great, great stuff for the Lakers. They probably could stand to up the pace a little bit with how well they're shooting the ball. Yeah, for 3-point percentage. Steph Curry. You know, I said that he regressed a little bit as a shooter. I think I was wrong. 45.7% from three. Incredible stuff, especially considering how high his volume is. Playing with a dominant, athletic MVP point guard is definitely going to help him with that. He can move around off ball and get a lot of open shots. And we are now up to 7 players with the over 3 3-pointers made threshold. Shout out Zach LaVine, just barely crossing that threshold as a rookie with 24 points per game. He is really looking great for the Sonics for the future. I love that pairing with Rudy Gobert. If they add just a couple of wings and a good point guard there, watch out. Okay, now let's take a look at cap sheets. Let me make sure that the salary cap is turned off. Yes, it is. Okay, this will be the final update for everybody's cap sheets before the offseason, so please take the 15 minutes or so, especially in this off day before the playoffs start, to update your sheet and enter just, this little bit of data in. That will help myself and especially Shane in auditing it and getting the turnaround to free agency quicker than it's been in the past. I know we had about a week of downtime the past couple of seasons, so please, please, please update your sheet. It does not take that much time. A little bit of a cap announcement. It remains to be seen whether or not there is going to be a cap increase next season. I do want everybody to be aware that we are reining that in because the game unfortunately limits you as to like how much you can inflate the cap. And so we're going to edge towards not increasing the cap pretty soon. And that is the reason that we've started offering extensions and new contracts at a flat as opposed to backloaded default. However, we did hold a vote, and we are going to be allowing backloaded contracts to people with bird rights. And so please be factoring that in. Don't offer too many of those backloaded contracts because once the cap stops increasing, the natural inflation of those salaries it means that you're going to have less and less cap moving forward. So it's best to still have the majority of your contracts be flat or even front-loaded. And but in the couple of times that you really want to retain a player, especially from free agency, we will allow you to use your bird rights to offer a backloaded contract. Where backloaded means that each subsequent year in the contract, it inflates by plus 5%. Wow, good amount of cap space for the almost 3-seed Kings. That bodes very well for them for this coming off season, and everybody's pretty much locked up too. So I mean, they're going to maintain that cap space. Perhaps losing Luol Deng wasn't that bad for them. I wish that we could get a revenge series between those two teams, but I think it is unlikely because they're on opposite ends of the Western bracket that they end up hitting each other. Kevin Garnett falling off the books as well as Lamar Odom. That is a good amount of cap, but not enough to open cap space for the Lakers. They'll probably be looking to retain them, but who knows? And that looming $14 million player option for Ajinça, also a huge question. Will he opt in because that is so much money, or will he want to hit the free agent market where there could be several suitors? 7'2" and having as dominant of a defensive run as he is, along with shooting over 40% from three, he could be a very coveted asset for a lot of different teams. New Jersey Nets with just a ton of cap. They did not make the play-in, unfortunately, but being the 11 seed could pan out pretty well for them in free agency. Denver Nuggets with that looming player option for Derrick Rose. Very curious to see if he opts in or not. A lot of cap for the Pels. If they can make the playoffs from the play-in, that will be very important for them. They could make an important signing for perhaps a new big or a new starting wing. A little bit of prog to both Dame and Beal next season. Watch out. They could retool very quickly. Or they could sell Chris Bosh, play into the youth, and who knows. Now the Raptors. This is my pet project team. They have to win 2 games to make it to the playoffs and then would be facing the Magic. So, I mean, not the greatest outlook, but they did beat the Magic in the final game of the season to make the play-in. And they have a metric shitload of cap. So if they can perform just a little bit in this playoffs, they could be making some great signings. Throw, I think, more than 2 max slots around. And who knows who they could bring in. Things are looking on the up and up for the former Derrick Rose owner. Ton of cap for the Suns here. It would also be huge for them to make the playoffs, which they have done from the play-in before. Seattle Supersonics just over the cap due to a lot of those veteran contracts they issued. I think they will probably have yet another season of posting on the trade block quite often. Timberwolves with a ton of cap still as well. That is actually incredible for a 3 seed. They will be able to really command some of the better free agents. Is that a max slot? That is a max slot that they have. Wow, that's crazy. And they don't have to pay anybody this next year. Whew. Watch out, because if they bring in a good shooting guard, they really could be giving the Rockets and the Nuggets a run for their money. Good amount of cap for the Golden State Warriors. That's about $15 million currently. And they do have, Dirk locked up for next year. And, of course, a ton of cap for the Wizards as well. Another team where it would be very big if they can make it through the play-in. So we have an exciting play-in here where the teams have a lot on the line in terms of being able to be an attractive free agent destination. I don't know if we've had this many teams that have that amount on the line. Okay. Now, let's take a look at rookie reports, which I skipped over. Nikola Jokic does run away with Rookie of the Year. However, with 9 points per game higher than him, Zach LaVine is looking like he is the future of the Sonics. Big shout out to Jacob Geiger as well. Over 27 points per game, so 27 minutes per game, so that means that he will be qualifying for the minutes qualifying rookie events after this season. Things are looking up in Portland. Joel Embiid finishes the season as the only double-digit rebounder among all rookies. Shout out Nurkic, though. Looking pretty good. Just a lot of garbage shooters here. Whew. At 8.2 assists as a center, the All-NBA rookie Nikola Jokic is by far the best playmaker of this class, which is just crazy to think about. I know that matches real life, but the fact that he is this developed coming into the league, second team All-NBA as a rookie, the Indiana Pacers have an extremely bright future and could be a problem for the East not long from now. Shabazz Napier with 1.7 steals. No wonder that he was a second team All-Rookie. 1.4 steals for Marcus Smart, no slouch. And rounding out blocks, of course, Joel Embiid at the top. And, of course, Nurkic also makes sense. Jeremy Grant, our slam dunk champion at 1.2 blocks per game. Kind of impressive. Big shout out Paul George, too, for being the first player to win both the slam dunk contest and the three-point contest in our league. I don't even know if that's happened in real life. Okay, and now let's take a look at player stats. You know, extremely balanced 76ers team. They are not exactly sexy with that front court of Brook Lopez and Serge Ibaka, great defense, but not great for spacing. I'm extremely curious to see how this team plays out. That could be a relatively difficult matchup in the first round for the Hawks. Could we have an upset on our hands? Who knows? Kind of doubt it. There was a little bit of regression for the scoring for Blake Griffin after they brought in 18.4 point per game scorer Monta Ellis, an extremely needed force for this team that had no other double-digit scorer. Great acquisition by Chimmy. And I think that the tiny bit of regression for Blake's scoring is actually good for his fatigue and just for the balance on the team. You want to be a little bit more unpredictable. Great scoring numbers for the Cavs here. Really, I think that they are the most underrated of the top 6 teams. We've just gotten kind of used to the way that they've built their team. Haven't made any sort of like major changes in the past 2 to 3 seasons. But consistency often pays off. No 20-point per game scorer for the Hawks here either. Cookie is constantly telling us how he does not have a franchise player. And while that is a little bit absurd to say after winning back-to-back lotteries, I kind of see his point. They could use a clear number 1 scorer to rise from that crop. This is a balanced team the Heat have. They probably should be starting Mo Williams or get another point guard to start over Manu Ginobili. I'm not sure that I love him at the 1, but I like that they tried something new, that they tried to see if the small ball could stick, and just, that many shot creators all at once. But, finishing as, I think they're a 12 seed, kind of disappointing for having the second best scorer in the league who has now 3 or 4 scoring titles. And our current scoring title holder, 28 6 points per game, 2.2 steals, and underrated 3 assists per game. His playmaking has gotten just a little bit better. Paul George is really one of the most dominant forces in the West. 53.8% from the field and 43.6% from 3. Good stuff. Boogie's numbers looking a little bit less sexy than they once did at 22 points per game and 10 assists. But, this team is really congealing better than ever. The defense looking okay from Boogie. Hopefully his ability to space can improve. If he can, then I think he can easily take the top center in the league spot. Their big X factor is going to be that cap space, especially if they make the second round. The Magic with 3 20-point per game scorers, and incredibly, one of only 3 teams to ever do this in history. Technically 2, because one of them happened after, both of them happened after this league started. So in this timeline, the only team ever to have 4, that's right, 4 separate All-Stars on the same team. Rubio, Love, Melo, and Tyreek all made the All-Star game. Absolutely crazy outcome for the Magic. They have had a truly blessed run for these past 4 years. Curious to see if their time is up or if they're going to make a 4th consecutive finals. B-Harp and extended runs of dominance. What else is new? 2 scorers above 23 points per game. Curry and Rose. This team is looking as dominant as ever. Not just that, but the second best defense in the league. The Nuggets, I know that it's easy to look at the Rockets winning back-to-back and having 72 wins and being like, oh, okay, they're going to three-peat. I don't know. There's no way that a Rockets-Nuggets series is not going to 7. And I personally have the Nuggets congealing enough in this season and having a good enough defense to top the Rockets. I think they're going all the way. I think they're winning their first ring. And with 2 MVPs under Derrick Rose's belt, as well as potentially a ring coming up, he's going to be climbing those all-time lists pretty quickly. Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal, the 2 20-point per game scorers for the Pelicans. I love what Gus did here. Both he and Locke nominees for GM of the Year, which is pretty crazy considering that's coming primarily off of a trade with one another. It's as win-win as it gets. Huge shout out to Jonas Valanciunas. Probably one of my picks for most improved player, but I don't even think he got any votes. At 17.2 points per game, 11.5 rebounds, decent defense. I mean, his shooting could be better. 42.8 is really not what you want from a center, but they lack a good point guard. He's only 22 years old. He's one of the better scoring centers in the league already. Impressive stuff. Huge shout out this year for the Rockets to both Keon Toscano and PJ Tucker for taking a leap and playing very pivotal roles in the team's success this year. This 3-year run for the Rockets has been historic. I don't know if there's any team that can match it. 213 wins in 3 seasons is crazy. Dwayne Wade, I think our clutch player of the year? What can you say that hasn't already been said? You know, if this team was a 6 seed, he would be an MVP candidate. He's all defense, clutch player of the year, and now on the other side of 30, not looking like he is slowing down whatsoever. Shout out CJ McCollum for bringing up to 19 points per game, 5 assists, 1.2 steals, ain't bad either. Where I was shooting from 3. 34.3%, could be better. Could be better, but he's only 23 years old. That's just going to get better with time. I like that the Thunder leaned into having a competent core around him, and I think that's probably going to help his progression. Shout out Norm Hickman. I think he had a Tim Duncan comp coming into the draft, and slowly but surely he is improving with the upwards trajectory of the Trailblazers. Huge shout out to Clay here. 46% from the field, only okay, but 22.8 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.2 blocks. Not to mention shooting almost 43% from 3. Huge leap for the 3rd pick in the first draft of the NMMA. Looking better than ever. Good for the 3rd best offense in the league as well. If they upgrade on Ty Lawson or add just a little bit of pieces around the fringe, this team could be looking to be a playoff team in the West. And the pretty decent Wizards rounding it out. Big shout out to Thomas Robinson with a 19-9. Okay, now let's take a look at the playoff matchups here. I did submit my bracket a little bit earlier. I currently have the Warriors making it out of the play-in in the West to face the Rockets in round 1. That means they'll have to beat both the very dominant Pels as well as probably the Suns here. And that's kind of a hot take here because, I mean, those are very good teams to beat. But I think that they are going to do it. But then it's going to be Rockets in probably 5 moving on to the second round. I do have the Kings beating the Spurs here. That's going to be an amazing first-round matchup to watch. So who knows where that lands. The Timberwolves and Lakers. I have the Lakers. I think that they have the offense to top the Timberwolves and the, of course, incredible amount of playoff experience. Time will tell, though, because, I mean, if the Timberwolves slow them down, they very well could be moving on to the second round. But right now, I have Lakers in 6. The Nuggets, I currently have facing probably the Jazz. And I think that is going to be a fairly difficult matchup, but the fact that they didn't upgrade, I think the Nuggets are going to be moving on in probably about 5. For the East here, I currently have the Bulls pretty much waltzing into the playoffs to face the Cavs. With their big moves that they make, I really think they raise their ceiling, and that is going to be a very challenging matchup for the Cavs. I actually have the Bulls not just moving into the playoffs, but upsetting the Cavs in round 1. Sorry, haters. And moving on to the second round, we'll see if that actually ends up panning out. Now, Washington and Toronto, who knows? That is a true coin flip matchup. I'm going to be hype beasting the Toronto Raptors, though, after them beating the Magic to end the season. I think they're going to be making it all the way in, beating both the Wizards and the Knicks in the play-in to face the Magic as a little rematch of that final game of the season. However, that's not going to hold. in the playoffs. The Magic are a true playoff riser, and I think they're going to be sweeping the Raptors to move on to the second round. Now, a first really great matchup here, the Fighting Irish versus the Pistons. This is going to be the Fighting Irish moving on, but Pistons are nowhere to sleep on. I think it's probably going to be a 5-game series, but I would not be surprised if it goes to 6. And the Hawks versus the 76ers, little bit of bad blood between these teams. Very curious to see if that ends up panning out to being anything special. I do have the Hawks moving on, but I think it's going to be a 6-game series. Wouldn't be shocked if it goes to 7, especially with the defense coming from Ibaka. So that has Magic Fighting Irish in the second round versus the Hawks and Bulls. I have Hawks and Fighting Irish moving on. I just think it is a brutal matchup for the Magic against the Fighting Irish. And then I have the Fighting Irish with their extremely high ceiling of all of that top veteran talent moving over the Hawks to go to the finals. Over in the West, it'll be Rockets versus Kings here. I think that is going to be a fairly difficult matchup, but I do have Rockets moving on to the Western Conference Finals in 6. And Nugs against the Lakers, I think that is not going to be hard. I have Nugs moving on in 5, but really it could be a sweep. And then with the Rockets and Nugs facing off in the Western Conference Finals, I think that the Rockets against the Kings is going to be a more difficult series, and the Rockets are going to be just a little bit gassed. If that is the case, I think that the Nuggets take it in 7, and it'll be a Nuggets Fighting Irish Finals. If that is the case, I have the Nuggets taking it in 5 and winning the NMMA championship. Time will tell. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. The playoff stream will be in the evening. Get your rotations in by the afternoon. So thanks for checking it out.